بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين. Amma ba'd. Respected elders, brothers in Islam, welcome to the last session related to Iman Mufassal from our program on Towards Understanding Aqeedah. Over the last few weeks we have been going part by part through Iman Mufassal. آمنت بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله واليوم الآخر والقدر خيره وشره من الله تعالى. And now we come to the last part, which is وَالْبَعْثِ بَعْدَ الْمَوْتِ, our belief in resurrection after death. Inshallah ta'ala, next week we will have a session which is related to Aqeedah but not to Iman Mufassal, on bid'ah, on innovation in Islam. And we hope that the following week we will have a question and answer session in which Allama Shah Raza Sahab Damat Barakatuhul Aliyah will be here to take your answers. Today then, there's quite a bit to get through, and I will say that every week the notes are pivotal to this actual program. The essence of the program are in the notes because they provide the detail and they provide the references as well. But certainly I will say that with today's lesson is that it's important to go through the notes, and we will only touch upon certain areas, whereas the detail will be found in the handouts at the end. But overall, I can give you an idea of what inshallah ta'ala we will cover in this lesson today. We will begin to talk about Mawt itself, about this idea of how everyone will actually have to experience death at one moment, what our belief is about the Ba'ath, the resurrection after death. And in order to understand that, and in order to understand the rest of the lesson, the most important part of this session will be focusing on what exactly is Mawt. What is the Islamic definition of it? How does our definition and our understanding of it differ from others? And what subsequent meanings and what subsequent rulings does this actually have now as well? Then we will talk about the questioning in the grave. We will talk about those fortunate beings whose bodies will not decay in the grave. We will talk about the alam-e-barzakh, that when a person dies, then he has left this world, and then the akhirat, the paradise and Jahannam, that will begin after the day of judgment. That period in between, that when a person dies and when the day of judgment actually comes, is known as barzakh. What is this period? What does it actually entail for you and I? What exactly happens during this period? And then at the end we will look at two ikhtilafi mas'ala, we can say, mas'ala which have divided the ummah, but as inshallah we will try to show are very simple and easy to understand issues. Firstly, the sustained life of prophets after death. This idea of hayatul anbiya, that they enjoy some kind of life after they leave this temporary world. And then finally, and it's related to death anyway, is the issue of Isaal Sawaab, that when a person passes away, then is there any means by which we can actually try to benefit that individual? That if our ancestors have passed away, if for example I leave a Quran in this mosque and I say that this, whoever reads from it, I dedicate the sawab and the reward for it for our ancestors, is there any benefit in that? Will anything actually get to them? Or is this something which is an innovation in Islam and which has no basis whatsoever? These are the kind of issues that we inshallah ta'ala will discuss in today's lesson. To begin with then, talk about resurrection after death. We will start with Mawt itself and death itself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it perfectly clear in the Holy Quran that each and every soul will eventually taste death. A verse which is repeated quite often in the Holy Quran, in which Allah eloquently says, Kullu nafsin za'iqatul maut, that every nafs will taste death in some form or the other. Whether it is a prophet, whether it is a martyr, whether it is from the awliya karam, each and every person will taste death eventually. To the extent we are told that the angel who is actually responsible for taking the souls from everyone, the Malak al-Maut, He is the person, he is the angel who goes around taking the soul from everyone. He too eventually will taste death. And we are told that there at the end of time, he too, with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will take his own soul. So even the Malak al-Mawt himself, the angel of death, he will experience death himself. So this is an inevitability for us all. And indeed the awliya ikram, they say that there is no conviction in the world, meaning an event that will certainly happen, that man denies more than death. That at the back of his mind he's always thinking that no, my death won't come yet, it'll be when I'm an old man. But it's certainly going to happen. But it's the one thing in his mind that he is most unlikely to believe. The thing that he accepts least. The thing that he has the most difficulty in trying to fathom himself. Eventually when everything will perish, when everything is destroyed, then it will only be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The trumpet will be blown and then everything on earth will have lost its life. On that day we will see the symbolic majesty and grandeur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when there is absolutely nothing alive. And in the Quran mentions that on that day Allah, when everything in front of him is perished, will say, Limanil mulkul yawm. That today, who does the real kingdom belong to? That those temporary people who had power, that those people who thought of themselves big, that where are they now? They have all perished and they have all died. Who does the real milkiyat, who does the real kingdom belong to? Lillahil wahidil qahhar. It belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one, the most powerful. So this will be a display of his power, this will be a display of his grandeur. On that basis as well, that we believe in death, that everyone will taste death, we also have to believe, and this is somewhat related to our previous lesson on qadr, on predestination, that death comes at the time which is predetermined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It cannot be put forward a second, it cannot be put forward a minute. That once the decision has been made, then that is it. Nothing can be done to delay it, nothing can be done to precede it. And a lot of people, sometimes they think that, for example, we see in the news that there is a plane crash, and a person believes that the fulan person, such and such person, died because he was in this plane crash. The cause of death is not the plane crash. That every time a plane crashes, that is not the cause of death. A lot of times it is. But how many times have we seen that a plane crashes, yet there is a survivor? Earlier this year we saw, I think it was a Yemen Airways, where more than 100 people died on board, yet there was one girl who survived. The cause of death is not the plane crash. The cause of death is the angel of death visiting you. That is the true reality of it. The cause of death in a car crash is not because the person didn't wear a seatbelt. That is a sabab behind it, but it's not always the cause, is it? That sometimes you will get a situation where a person does have a crash. He didn't wear the seatbelt, but he does not die. And this shows that in reality the true cause of death is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's appointed time. That when he decides that this person's time has come, then that is exactly when he is going to taste death. Our belief in resurrection after death, this is called al-ba's ba'd al-maut. Ba'sa in Arabic means to send. So ba'da means after, al-maut after death. This idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send people back to him after death. This is what is referred to as the resurrection. This idea that we will all return to our Creator. This, for the people of today, and certainly for the kuffar in the times of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, was perhaps the most difficult part to understand. But how can it be that once a person has perished, you put him under the ground, that his body has decayed, nothing is left as bones, how do you presuppose for a moment that he will return alive again? And this is something that the atheists of today perhaps have got the largest problem with as well, with religion as a whole. That rationally it never registers with them. They cannot get their head around it, that once a person has become bones, then how is he going to be recreated again? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says most eloquently in Surah Yasin, one of the last few verses of Surah Yasin, in which the kuffar, they say that مَنْ يُحْيِي الْعِظَامَ وَهِيَ رَمِيمٌ. They ask the same question, that who is going to revive these bones when they become dust, when they become nothing? Listen to the answer that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives. He goes, قُلْ يُحْيِيهَا الَّذِي أَنْشَأَهَا أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ. He will give life to the bones again, the one who created them in the first place. Meaning, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the bones and everything in the first place, what's so hard about resurrecting them now? Recreation is not hard when you were the original creator. So if anything, if you have any problems with this, you should be having questions and objections upon the actual creation. How did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create something from absolutely nothing? That would be a true rational objection. But so beautifully and so eloquently, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He avoids all of these questions and say that look at your foolishness and look at the shallowness of your argument. That if Allah created it in the first place, why can't He create it again? And at least this time He has something to work on. He has the bones and He has the remains from there. So this argument, it is totally against common sense. Once we have accepted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as our creator, then there is nothing difficult in Him actually recreating once again. Another verse in the Quran from Surah Taha, مِنْهَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ, from the dust, from the earth we have created you. وَفِيهَا نُعِيدُكُمْ, and in it we will return you, meaning when you die. وَمِنْهَا نُخْرِجُكُمْ تَارَةً أُخْرَى, and then we will take you out of it once again. Coming to the main part, and then after this I will introduce you to Mufti Saab, who will talk about different issues which are all related to this pivotal and very important point about what is the actual definition of death. What is Mawt in Arabic? What is the definition of that? Because the way language works, what we tend to associate death to be is nothingness. Because we see death as the opposite of life. That the opposite of day is night, the opposite of black is white, the opposite of life is death. So on that basis we think to ourselves that when a person is alive, he can speak, he can hear, he can go to certain places, he can respond, he can feel certain sensations. And that is when a person is alive. So on that basis we think that, well, then death is the opposite of life. So therefore, when a person is dead, he will not be able to respond. He will not be able to hear. He will not be able to speak. That is our common understanding of it, and certainly this is how non-Muslims actually see this situation. However, our definition and our approach to Mawt is different. And I will give you just one famous scholar, a Mufassir, Imam Qurtubi rahmatullah alayhi, from the 7th, 8th century. He defines Mawt, and he says that death is not mere nothingness. Rather, Mawt, death in Islam, means the transferal from one state to another. Think about it as going from one place to another. That is the definition of death in Islam. And to help you to understand that, I will tell you the Arabic word for transferal. The transferal in Arabic is intiqal. The full definition in Arabic is al-intiqal min halin ila hal. The transferal from one state to another. Intiqal in Arabic means to transfer from one place to another. But it is a word that you will perhaps know from usage in the Urdu language as well. When a person passes away, then in Urdu a lot of the times what we say is Fulan aadmi ka intiqal ho gaya. We say that. And what does intiqal mean? It means transferal. So what this tells us is that in terms of language as well, we do accept it, although we don't actually understand that all of the time. In reality, death is moving from one place or the other. So what does it mean then? It just means that you have left this part of the earth, the above part of the earth, now it is flipped over and now you are under the earth. That's where the transferal has taken place. It does not mean total obliteration. It does not mean non-existence after death. It does not mean what we say in Arabic, Adam. Adam means nothingness. It does not mean that. And I'll give you one or two simple examples from which you will understand that, and then inshallah what Mufti Sahib will explain will be very, very straightforward and simple. I will not give you examples of the Anbiya Ikram. I will not give you examples of the Shuhada Ikram. Rather, I will give you an example of ordinary people. And then from that you'll understand that death does not imply